So, good morning. Something a bit different today. I found myself with some time to spare in Lincoln. Lincoln's a city I've got to know a little bit over the last few years. My son's been at university here, so we've been coming down to see him. And, my wife and Morgan and his girlfriend have gone off to do some wandering around shops and stuff, which frankly was never going to interest me. So I thought, well, spare time in Lincoln, what can I do? And I thought it might be interesting to come and investigate some of the history that Lincoln has associated with steam and with traction engines. It really was one of the key places for traction engine production for main companies based in Lincoln. You had Foster, Robey, Ruston, and Clayton and Shuttleworth. And I've got to say it's interesting looking at this in Lincoln, because it's slightly dismaying that so little love, so little care is put into the preservation of these things. And actually, I think a really good example of that is where I'm starting my walk today, because you can probably see behind me we've got Shuttleworth. I'm just going to flip the camera around. Now, the stamp end works here. Now, if you look on Google Maps, and I'll include a shot of it, but when I was researching this, I was looking on Google Maps, and you could actually see the tops of the building still saying Clayton and Shuttleworth. I'll find the date of that, but clearly that's the changes here have been very, very recent. The Clayton side of that building has been demolished, and another monstrosity has been erected in its place. And I think it's a shame that Lincoln doesn't do more to preserve what should be a very proud industrial past. Just one other thing as I wander along here through next to the river here through Lincoln. I have to say that this is all the result of very little in the way of research. I decided late yesterday that this would be a good thing to do today, so I've literally spent a couple of hours reading through various bits on the Tinternet, just to find out a bit more about the history of the area and about its association with steam. So it is extremely likely, generator, I'm going to stay away from that so you can hear me for a moment. Very likely I'll get a lot of this wrong, so please do take it with a pinch of salt. And if you have more information, if you've got corrections you'd like to put in, if you've got information that you'd like to add, please add it into the comments, and then maybe I can do an update at some stage.
Well, the Stamp End Works in Lincoln has a history intertwined with the rise of agricultural machinery and the Industrial Revolution. The story begins with Nathaniel Clayton and Joseph Shuttleworth, who formed a partnership in 1842, establishing Clayton and Shuttleworth at the Stamp End Works. Their initial focus was on producing machinery for grinding corn and seeds. The pair quickly recognizing the potential of steam power, and they began manufacturing portable steam engines in 1845. Obviously, these engines revolutionized agriculture, powering threshing machines and other farm equipment. Clayton and Shuttleworth rapidly expanded, becoming a major employer in Lincoln. They continually innovated, introducing and gaining a reputation for quality and reliability, and exported worldwide. By the late 19th century, Clayton and Shuttleworth were a global leader in agricultural machinery. They had a vast factory complex at Stamp End, with their own foundry, workshops, and even a power plant. They also established a factory in Vienna to serve the European market. But as with so many of their contemporaries, the rise of the internal combustion engine and the tractor in the early 20th century led to a decline in demand for steam-powered machinery. Clayton and Shuttleworth struggled to adapt and eventually ceased production in the 1960s.
So as we come along Waterside, from the Stamp End Depot, the City of Lincoln Rubbish Works. We've got a series of industrial buildings. I can only speculate whether these were Clayton and Shuttleworth or not, but certainly further along here, the research tells me is where Foster started as well. Another of those really significant traction engine manufacturers.
Often simply called Fosters of Lincoln, William Foster and Company Limited is probably the best known of the Lincoln traction engine manufacturers. In 1846, William Foster bought a flour mill in Lincoln and begins manufacturing mill machinery and threshing machinery. For anyone that doesn't know, threshing is the process of separating the grain from the stalks and the husks of a cereal such as wheat. So it makes sense that a mill owner would want to optimise this process. Possibly the more important point is in 1856, when the mill is transformed into an iron foundry, marking the birth of the Wellington foundry. And in 1877, the company officially becomes William Foster and Company Limited. In 1889, they begin producing traction engines, including the notable Foster Wellington and Showman's road locomotives. Seemingly the only thing that Lincoln remembers from this era, and it's later than this era really, is that in 1915, under the leadership of Sir William Triton, Foster's played a pivotal role in developing the first armoured fighting vehicle, the tank, in collaboration with the Land Ships Committee led by Winston Churchill. The prototype was completed in just 39 days and first saw action in 1916. In 1942, Foster stopped building traction engines, and in 1960 Foster & Co. is taken over by W.H. Allen & Sons Limited, and then which became Amalgamated Power Engineering in 1968.
Now, as we come down here, we've got Waterside South and Waterside North, and somewhere here was the original foundry for Foster's. I've got a bit to say about this. Now, I'm struggling in the time that I had to really establish where it originally was, because I believe the side that I'm on now is Waterside South, and some of the research that I did said that the factory was on Waterside South, the original factory, but there was another indication that the factory got demolished, and since then it's only actually been used for parking. So why did they demolish it? And obviously on the other side there, we've got a large area which is solely parking. So it's quite likely that the foundry may have been there, but one side or the other, I'm not sure it's incredibly important which, but certainly it was
As
here
we come
somewhere. Along Waterside here, I think this is a really sort of important depiction of the challenge of maintaining the architectural history. I mean, these were substantial Victorian factory buildings, and they are expensive to maintain, partly because of their age, partly because of the vastness of the structures. I mean, the Victorians were well known for the quality of their architectural engineering. But I mean, here, even just maintaining this facade is taking some considerable work. And I think that's, therein lies the challenge of maintaining this history. Because for so many of these factories where they've changed hands over time, they've lost a connection with that historical element. And the modern business owner just can't justify putting the money into maintaining Victorian buildings, so a lot of them have been pulled down and the land put to more modern purposes. But I think it's a shame, because there seems, particularly in Lincoln, to be so little real acknowledgement of the value of these architects, the Victorian architecture and the heritage that they represent. So. This is this part of the Waterside now with Siemens, German industrial giant. But at the back there, you're poking through, you can still see some of those classic Victorian features. I'm guessing there that at the back there you've got that what looks like a chimney going up. The pot's obviously been lost from the top and probably been capped off for many years, but you know, it's nice to see some of the history.
This is one interesting memorial to Lincoln's connection to Foster, certainly. Some sort of memorial. William Foster, Mayor of Lincoln in 1864. Certainly the William Foster that we're talking about. But interesting to see this, and the fact that it seems so unloved on the high street in Lincoln.
We're now just approaching the Cannock Road from Ripon Street, and you can actually see there above the doorway it says Robi Co Limited, so that's a pretty good giveaway.
So Robies were in the forefront of traction engine development. The idea that the portable engine could be converted to drive itself under its own power evolved around 1859. The traction engine, in the form recognisable today, developed partly from an experiment in 1859 when Thomas Aveling modified a Clayton Shuttleworth portable to become self-propelled by fitting a long driving chain between the crankshaft and the rear axle. Lincoln manufacturers rapidly developed this idea. Robi's first design was to develop a traction engine steered by a man in front of the boiler. This was displayed at the International Exhibition of 1862. Robi's rapidly became an important employer in Lincoln. And by 1865, we're employing 114 men. The works covered a total area along Cannock Road of 7 acres. And around 1870, the name of the Perseverance Ironworks was changed to the Globe Works. Robi Co eventually closed the Cannock Road works in 1988, so it survived a very, very long time. Above the door here, you can just see the globe, signifying the Globe Works.
So again, from the research that I've done, it appears that this is the Firth Road site that Rustons were located on, and actually there's virtually nothing here that remains of the Victorian structure. There are only a couple of things I've noticed, which is that there's a wall down here on the left hand side, and I'll show that when we go down there, that comes from there, and there's according to my son, there's now a shed around the other side, so we're going to have a look at that as well. So we're at the far end of the site now, and it appears there is actually an original Victorian piece of the site that they've not yet got around to demolishing. I mean, obviously quite derelict, but it's probably, I mean, I don't know for sure that this was even anything to do with Ruston's, but judging from the Firth Road site, I mean, there certainly seems to be the Firth Road site that Ruston's occupied, so it would be logical that this would then be a part of that. And you can see from the shape there that there was a probably a single story building that would have come across here, but I mean, it really is quite derelict here. But there is a nice Victorian pub over the other side there. So again, from what I can tell, using the research that I've done and so on, is that this is the site that Foster moved to. I'll put up on the screen the year they moved, or when they established this, but they grew to a point where the waterside site was no longer sufficient in size for them, so they moved to this side of Lincoln, and I mean, again, when we look at the architectural preservation, you know, I mean, these big Victorian sheds, are now largely gone. I mean, when you look at what's already replaced them on the other side of the road, modernity is creeping in, but there are still some really interesting characteristics. I mean, obviously these big doors. I mean, you know, this is the site where we are talking about the creation of the first tanks. I mean, when you look up here, you look at all the bracketry on top that the cables would have run through. It was clearly, an absolutely vast site. The ladder cages going to the roof accesses, but all down here, this is all completely derelict. Now look, I mean, you know, when we talk about moving from an industrial to a knowledge-based economy, we see the dereliction in there, and the development of Lincoln Science and Innovation Park and the modern buildings. Clearly, this is a more attractive place for people to be in. But you know, you can't help thinking that there's a lot of industrial heritage that's being lost and just not even recognised. You know, I mean, this is a significant historical site. Just, you know, I mean, you know, if there's not a demand for the space, then what are you supposed to do? You can't hold on to things forever. And actually, as we come down a bit further, there does seem to be a bit of building in occupation, or at least in recent occupation. But I think it's only a matter of time until whether it's the university or its other commercial interests will come across and sweep all of this away, and the last vestiges of Foster and Lincoln will be erased from history completely. You know, for a significant part of the Industrial Revolution to be completely erased from history, I think is very, very sad. Lincoln Crankshaft and Machine Limited, Bay 18. Yeah, I mean, that's when you look up there, Rilmac Fabrication Heavy Division. I mean, it's that's actually some of the real classic engineering that Lincoln was famous for. You know, sadly, it's not well-paid employment and isn't significantly valued anymore. But you know, I sent a photograph earlier to Nick Rowland, who's currently in the process of restoring a Clayton and Shuttleworth, and he rightly said, well, you know, I've got a mini Clayton and Shuttleworth factory at home now. And he's right. I mean, it's thanks to the steam preservation movement that we are retaining that history. We're keeping that history alive, as not just as the physical history, but the social history that goes with it. I think it's an important thing to see and to recognise and to celebrate. We should be incredibly proud of the things that were done in Britain at the time. Yeah, we were at the forefront of the world, and I acknowledge the fact that we still are in so many ways. But no, it's very different now, and certainly Lincoln's changed a huge amount. As I've said, I just kind of feel it's a shame that Lincoln hasn't taken a little bit more pride in its industrial heritage. And, well, perhaps I would certainly encourage the city council to think about doing so. And look, maybe there's stuff I'm missing. I don't know. If there is, please tell me about it in the comments, and I'll come back to Lincoln and I'll make another video. Well, if you made it this far in the video, then well done. Sorry for my general ramblings as I'm walking around Lincoln. I've actually had to get a lift for the last part of it because, frankly, my leg wasn't up to walking quite this far around Lincoln. But anyway, thank you. If you're not a subscriber, think about subscribing. There'll be more of this drivel to come. Thanks very much. Bye.